Welcome to Other People's Shoes. This season, we're exploring what it means to be unmade. Life can sometimes feel like an unmade bed. Messy, chaotic, and overwhelming. But here's the beauty. Every unmade bed has the potential to be remade. In Season 20, we're sharing powerful stories of people who faced their life's chaos head-on and found the courage to rebuild, turning their messes into masterpieces. Just like starting your day with a simple act of making your bed, these stories remind us that small steps can lead to extraordinary transformations. So put on your shoes and take the first step toward remaking your own life. You're about to be inspired, challenged, and encouraged in ways you never expected. This is Other People's Shoes, Season 20. Unmade. And now, here's your host, Neil Matthews.
Yes. Welcome in, one and all. You know whose voice that is by now. You do know we bear no expense around here. We go out and we hire the best voice possible. I don't know. I just think it's kind of nice to have someone else's voice before my voice. I've always thought of that being a good transition between a girl voice to a boy voice. I don't know. Maybe that's just how my mind thinks. So welcome in. Been asking you this, feel like every week. So we'll ask it again. Did you make your bed today? And there's a reason for that. I firmly believe this, and maybe my next guest will have more to share on this, that it's that simple act of making our bed. It's that simple act of doing something maybe to start our day with something that has been chaotic and messy and cluttery. And believe me, I have been the clutter bug of clutter bugs. I could probably be the clutter bug king. But something powerful happens when we make our bed and we do that nice smoothing of the sheet and the blankets and everything. We don't just leave it in a wadded mess. Good to start something new. So help me welcome in my new friend, Jill. Jill, help us with this. Did you make your bed this morning?
I absolutely made my bed this morning. I don't think I would leave the bedroom if I hadn't made my bed this morning.
I know you did tell us that typically you make your bed most mornings unless you're in a hotel. Then you leave the bed unmade. Now help me, why in the hotel do you leave it unmade?
Honestly, I think that's my little cheap monster on my shoulder being like, well, you paid for this room and the room service is part of it, so let them handle it. It's kind of the same reason that I make the AC way colder than I would at home, leave lights on when I leave. Oh God, I'm such an awful guest. I'm so sorry to every hotel I've ever stayed at.
Good thing they don't leave Yelp reviews or Google reviews on our guest experience. Can you imagine guest that was in room number 658? They were awful.
They do it with Uber. Maybe they should with some hotels. Here I am worrying about not turning on lights, and some other people are just gross. That's all I'll say.
Well, Jill, help us with this. When we would find you maybe out and about in that Fort Lauderdale area, what shoes might we find you wearing as you make your journey, your errands, maybe your fun gallivanting, skipping through the areas of Fort Lauderdale? What might we find you in?
So you're definitely going to find me in something that is flat and something that is closed toe. Those are my two. Unless I'm directly on the beach and I have to wear flip-flops, my two non-negotiables are flats and closed toe. So I'm a big fan of different color combat boots. I have bright pink combat boots that are this color. I have a pair of denim with studs. I have a silver pair. And I also like really funky sneakers, platform sneakers as well. I'm a tall gal, but I don't mind having a lot of extra height.
Now, when you say tall, help me with that. What height are you?
Maybe I should clarify. I'm not tall. I'm not Megan Thee Stallion here. I am 5'7". So you put a good 3-4 inches on me and I'm almost there.
Yeah, I mean, you're not 5'2".
Right, exactly.
Okay, all right. Just checking. We ask that quite often. People always ask, why do you still ask that, Neil? It's been 6 years now. Let's find another way to welcome the guest in. Is there a better icebreaker? And I always say, no, there is not. There is the best question and the only question to ask, and that's, what style of shoe do you wear? For the guys, we do ask them their shoe size. Apparently, that was offensive to some of the ladies we had in the early years.
I'd rather you ask me my shoe size than my age.
That's kind of what I was wondering.
Yeah. I'll tell you my shoe size easy. I'm 7.5.
Well, you didn't have to tell us that. We weren't insinuating that. You didn't have to tell us that. It's okay. We weren't looking for that.
Oh, good. That way, if anyone ever wants to send me any shoes, now
There
you know
you
what
go.
size.
There you go.
I develop any fans out there who are shoe givers. I don't know.
I'm looking for a shoe giver. So if you find somebody that is a shoe sponsor, we're always looking. My fear is because I hate Skechers and New Balance so much. Those are the two companies that'll come to me first. And they'll be like, listen, Neil, we're going to get you some shoes. And I'm like, no, thank you. Right. There you go.
And like they'll send me like a bunch of stilettos. I'm like, oh Jesus, I'm not in my 20s anymore, people.
Right. So Jill, how was with this? When we talk about, again, Unmade and this idea of chaos and mess and clutter, perhaps, what does Unmade mean to you?
Unmade definitely describes a 17-year period in my life that was consumed by an eating disorder and addiction. I would say before that 17 years and now after that 17 years, I am straight up Capricorn, type A, organized, committed, very much a made person, born that way, very serious, came in on a mission. For those 17, what we would call unmade years, I went through a lot of chaos.
What led to the eating disorder?
Wow, a lot of things. I mean, I think a lot of the women in my generation will say that we got some of the worst media in our faces. If you look back at like the early 2000s, and there's tons of TikTok videos and reels that kind of like demonstrate this, the way that we talked about bodies and women back then is horrifying to look at. The way that they talked about Jessica and Brittany and Jessica Simpson, and we look back at pictures and we're like, they weren't that big. Why were we talking about them like that? It was because we were going through a really fat phobic time growing up on that. And I was like a huge TV nerd. I think the TV was my babysitter sometimes. I swear. I love TV because I wanted to be an actress. My little child brain, I think, really got that message of fat, bad, skinny, good, ugly, bad, pretty, good. Watch any episode of Saved by the Bell. You'll see it in action. They won't go to prom with the fat girls. There were so many years I went through trying to figure out why this happens. I had such a great childhood. I had two very loving parents, a sister that I mostly got along with. We're better now. There was no awful trauma or anything. And I think that really had a lot to do with it. And then when I made the big transition to go to college, I think that was kind of what triggered it. Was like, I need to be a different person. I need to be cooler. I need to be prettier, have more friends, I was kind of an ugly duckling in middle school and high school. And so I wanted to be different, feel different, have the boys chase after me. And I thought that was the way to get it. And I wasn't a big person by any means. I was a snacker. My parents never inhibited anything that we ate or anything like that. And I was just like a marathon eater. So I was just like a little chunky. I was not obese by any means, but I did like start losing weight from purging and I got addicted to it. It really consumed my life for 17 years. In the beginning, I tried a few different inpatient facilities. As soon as my parents found out that it was going on, they threw me into all kinds of therapy and I was good for a minute and then I wasn't good. And I was too embarrassed to tell anyone I wasn't good. And so for 10 years, I just lived it in secret. And so of that 17-year period, the 10 years where it was a secret, those were the absolute worst and most chaotic. When you're living in your own hell and no one's there trying to help you because you're not trying to help yourself, that's to me like the worst kind of chaos. After those 10 years, when I did finally admit to it, that's when I did start getting help again. A few things didn't work until I found something that works. For 6 years, I've been living a really healthy, fulfilling, made life.
I remember the show Growing Pains growing up. It was one of the shows I really liked. Still, I love Kirk Cameron. I think he's fantastic. I know some people maybe don't like his political views or his religious standpoints. I like those things too, so I'm a big fan of him. I say that because I think the gal's name was Tracy Gold. Am I remembering right?
Yes, absolutely.
I think as a child, that was the first time somebody ever introduced me or I was made aware of an eating disorder because she came out openly and said she was dealing with it.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid not understanding what it was, and then probably watching like the Degrassi after school special, and there was probably a girl on there that was throwing up all the time, and I was like, that's gross. Why do people do that? I don't like to throw up even when I'm sick, and to naturally think that somebody's gonna go in and do that. I was a very skinny kid growing up, and a lot of people thought my mom was starving me, and my Grammy would sneak me cookies, aunts and uncles would sneak me sugary stuff to try to get me built up and bulked up, all these things. And I look at my high school Neil and I look at the now Neil, and I'm like, man, I want to go back to that guy. My wife's like, you were too skinny. You were way too skinny. I wonder why girls in general struggle with this, it seems like, more than guys do. Do you have maybe an answer to that from your standpoint? Again, maybe you don't have any like clinical research.
Yeah, I would say a couple things. The first is I found it interesting that your experience with seeing Tracy Gold and Degrassi episode, or I can remember there was a movie called Angus. It was like a teen movie.
I feel like I saw that. Yeah.
It was the girl who was also in Jurassic Park, which is why it was kind of like a big thing back then, but she had bulimia. And so where your reaction was kind of like gross, I remember glamorizing it and being like, I don't remember directly thinking like, whoa, that looks cool, but something clicked in my brain of like, this is a way to get attention. I can also remember being in middle school, and I think it was like my dentist, his daughter was in recovery from an eating disorder, and she had an article in the newspaper or something. And that was another moment of like, oh, that's something I could do. Our minds are so young. I have no idea what the thought process was back then, because I was maybe 11 or 12 years old. Still to this day can remember hearing about it. So I know that there's like some significance there. I think, again, talking about the media, there's so much more pressure on women, not just to look good, because there's definitely pressure on men to look good, but for women especially to be thin. It's just culturally. If you look at old ads in the 1950s in the newspapers for diet things, they would literally like talk about how disgusting women's bodies are. I think just culturally, that's a lot of the reason. That'd be my guess. I don't have a PhD or anything.
Right. Well, and that's what I was asking, just from your standpoint. Again, I know you're not like you're not Dr. Jill.
Yeah.
You're, as far as I know. What do you think that did to you and maybe your peers? What has been the lasting effect of that coming out of that generation where you mentioned Saved by the Bell? Again, another one of my favorite shows. I'm a big Kelly Kapowski fan. I'm a big Tiffany Amber Thiessen. I mean, my wife gives me a bad time. For the record, I think my wife is prettier than Tiffany Amber Thiessen, okay? I'm saying it now.
You're that wife? Ooh, that is a good compliment.
I'm saying that now. I think she is prettier than Tiffany Amber Thiessen. She was on something the other day, and my wife's like, you think she's prettier than me, don't you? And I was like, no, I don't.
She was the holy grail for me. I wanted to be Kelly Kapowski.
And that's and that's what I'm getting after is, again, you talk about the media maybe malforming is a good maybe word, perhaps. Malforming our teenage girls. And I have a teenage daughter too. She's 17 now. I don't dare, no way ever would I ever look at her and say, those jeans make you look fat. Yeah. Or that makes you look whatever. She'll ask me from time to time, Dad, what do you think of this? And I say, I'm very, very careful. Like I stop everything I'm doing and I'm like, okay, no flippant response, no teasing response, because that's kind of my temperament, my personality. I tease to show affection. I'm very conscious of when those conversations happen to be very selective on what I say and how I say it and the tone I say it in and all the things. A lot of things going on at once. Was that your experience? Do you think people put more on you than the media did? Do you think peer pressure put on you? Help me understand that.
Yeah, I think it was less comments direct, because again, I was never a big person. I went through maybe phases where you could call me like a little bit above average. I was never like someone who a doctor was going to pull me aside and be like, hey, you need to cut down. So I never experienced maybe like directly like my parents saying like, hey, you need to lose weight. I also think that we learn from our parents as well. So even if they're not directing the comments at me, when I would hear my mother, and I'm going to be very careful here because I know my mom's going to listen to this and I don't want her to feel like I'm blaming her, because also her generation was raised in a completely different way. Their mothers projected so much onto them. I would remember my mom talking negatively about herself, maybe if we were at the beach, like my mom would never wear a two-piece or anything. Girls kind of like inherit that shame. We don't have any realization about our bodies until we do. When we see our mothers or our fathers too, dissecting themselves or being cruel to themselves, we mimic that behavior as children and it becomes learned behavior. That's just kind of like another thing. And it's great that like, you're so like mindful about your daughter. I don't have kids and I think it would be the hardest thing to parent because not just this issue, you don't just have to worry about accidentally calling them fat. You can accidentally cause them to have anxiety or you can, I don't want to talk about all the ways you can F up a kid. That's not my journey.
There's a lot. Let's just say that there's a few ways you can really screw up a kid up.
Well, I'm going on a tangent.
For you, again, going back to you and your story and your situation, the first time you decided you were a vomiter from the sound of it. What was that experience like? Can you walk me through that first? I mean, I don't need the gory details of what came out of you. Think like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this to see if it works.
I've tried to go back to that moment so many times. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago that was. I do remember it was like right before our senior trip to Disney. So I think I felt like I needed to do something. Hopefully this isn't a gory detail, but I do remember using a toothbrush. Like I didn't know like any techniques, but it's definitely kind of weird that a toothbrush is used to like clean your teeth. And I was definitely not. I really don't remember much from there. I don't remember how it cycled. It started as something that was maybe once a week or once if I had a bad meal. And, at my worst, it was something that was going on 8-9 times a day. I mean, I call it an addiction. It is absolutely an addiction. And anorexia is an addiction too, because I did go through certain periods of that and starving yourself, any behavior that you're doing repeatedly that's causing you harm, that's an addiction. Bulimia specifically, you're constantly ridding your body of food. You're immediately hungry again. So I was like a drug addict. Thank God Uber Eats was not around at this time. It was like very limited options for delivery because also it's very shameful. So you can't go into a restaurant and just do this. You have to like do it in hiding. I'd be spending like $100 a day on food for myself to just binge on. It was a mess. It was so out of control, really how I felt for so long. To bring it around to the bed, because I didn't make my bed back then, I think I actually did start to in the midst of it because I heard a video with, I believe the gentleman is in the Marines, but I could be wrong. I heard that for the first time, I want to say maybe around like the 2016 area. I think that's when I started to try to make my bed to at least do one thing that wasn't chaotic. And now that's why it's like something that I got to start my day with. Because I'm not going to start my day with chaos.
I'm pretty fortunate. Most of the time I go to leave in the morning, my wife is still asleep. So I don't have to make my bed. And then on Saturdays, I'm out usually recording or editing. And so I'll come into the house. And again, I get up before her even on Saturdays to edit or do, podcast related things. And I'll come into the house. The bed's always made and the house is always picked up and cleaned up because she doesn't like chaos. She doesn't like clutter.
Love it.
You could go back to maybe 12-year-old you. What would you tell that young lady?
I feel like it'd be really hard to describe to her what I want to tell her, which would be like to not worry about the superficial stuff and to just really focus on what you're good at and what makes you happy and to lean into your weird instead of leaning away from it. That would be the overall message.
Would she believe you?
Nope. She was such a brat. She was such a brat.
I think so many times in life, these things happen to us. These events happen. Sometimes things happen in my life and I'm like, why did that happen? And then a very good friend of mine said, how do you know that wasn't for you and not for someone else?
Ooh.
And I was like, I don't understand what you mean. And she said, well, let's think about this. My wife and I lost a child before my daughter. This friend, who I love dearly, said to me, what if this miscarriage is not for you? It's for someone else. That you can now help somebody else. You can now help somebody understand the pain of that, walking through that horrific thing. Maybe it wasn't for you. Maybe it was for somebody else. Maybe you got to experience that because, again, it was for someone else. So you could help someone else. And I said, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. More and more people I talk to, the more and more times I get to hit record and sit in front of somebody and they get to sit in front of me, I'm like, was that for them? Was that for them or was that for someone else to help someone else, put their arm around them and like, go, listen, you're not alone. You have a buddy. I've done it too, or I've experienced that too. So do you think that's true of you?
Before I went through all of that, I was a very selfish person. Most 16-year-olds are selfish, but I was like decidedly more bratty and selfish and spoiled. You had told me you're going to help people for a living. I'd be like, ew. I want to be in movies. That would not have been my vibe. Going through everything that I went through, I've just become such a more insightful person. And you also realize that we are put here to like serve others, and that when you do serve others, you're just happier. It brings you more joy. And I feel like I definitely thought in my 6 years of being sober from everything, I've definitely toyed with how I want to help people. You never wanted to like dive in and become like a eating disorder counselor or a therapist or anything like that. Recently, one of the things I realized was that a lot of this happened because I just felt so unworthy and so undeserving. And it caused me to just have no self-esteem, no confidence. One of the times that I was confident was when I was on the stage. I was a theater person. What I've been doing and developing kind of over the past half of a year, this is like super new, but it's something that I want to bring, is improv specifically to women to help them with like their confidence, specifically in business. Like I said, as women, we're taught to shrink ourselves. We're taught to be smaller. We're not taken as seriously still in this year in certain rooms, in certain industries. We're not going to be taken seriously by being quiet and shy and cowering away and like not taking those risks. So my goal is to help women just hype them up and see how amazing they are through this improv, because I've seen it happen in sessions that I've done, just seen them build their confidence and be like, oh, whoa, I just did that. I can do lots of cool things. So I feel like that's my mission. I feel like that's my purpose. I don't want to say my pain into purpose because people say that, but it's really the only thing that's coming to mind because it's so true.
Well, I think that's awesome. I think anytime someone can take, again, their pain and turn it into a purpose, or take a scar and turn it into a mark to say, no, listen, you don't have to be where I am. You don't have to be where I was. You can be somewhere different. I love that idea. You mentioned not feeling worthy. Where did those feelings come from, do you think?
I know that's another one that has definitely kept me up a few nights of not feeling worthy. I mean, my God, my parents certainly always made me feel more than worthy. It was like something that just always felt inherent in me. I guess not always, I don't remember when I was a baby, but I can remember being a young kid at camp and not feeling good enough in certain ways. Just like knowing I wasn't that girl, because now I am that girl. Anyone can be that girl. I'm saying that because anyone can be that girl. Or that guy.
I think people look at their lives again and they think they maybe see somebody on a stage, an actress or an actor or an entertainer of some sort, and they're like, I could never do that. That's not me. I mean, look at them. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not enough. And they really start shooting on themselves. Should I have done that? Should I have done this? I could have done that, or could have themselves. And I just wonder for you, when you think back, what has given you those maybe wings to have the courage, to have the ability, maybe even the cojones in some respects, to say, no, I'm going to be different. I am worthy enough to be on that stage or on that platform, or worthy enough to help someone.
Yeah. Oh my God. So many different things come to mind because it definitely took me a while to own my power. I would say it started with my love of being on the stage. When I was on the stage, I didn't have to be me. I could be someone else. I think that any form of stage fright kind of was out the door in that sense, that I wasn't afraid to get up on stage and be silly and be a character. People applauded me for it. You know, I'm a stand-up comedian, sort of. It's definitely my weakest of all the comedies. I'm way more sketch comedy and improv, but I do stand-up. And that still is the hardest one for me because that's still the one where I get up there and I have to be myself. And my heart still races of like, oh my God, people are going to judge me. I think first off, recognizing that everyone gets imposter syndrome, as we'll call it. So everyone. I think that hit me when I heard one of my mentors, someone who I really looked up to, who in my mind had accomplished so much. And she was like, yeah, I still struggle with imposter syndrome. And it made me realize that it just happens at all levels. And it doesn't mean that it's right, that imposter syndrome voice. It's kind of comforting knowing that everyone goes through it, because if everyone goes through it, it must not be real. We're not all imposters.
I hear what you're saying. And I think so many times I struggle with, I want to make a difference. I want to be the person that makes an impact. I want to feel like my life has mattered to someone. And I had a friend recently say to me, you know what, Neil, why do you care so much about that? Why is that such a big deal? And I said, because I grew up with parents, very loving, but very hurtful people. They were very hurt. They were. That's just their backstory. That's their background. And I don't think they really knew how to parent. I think they did the best they could with the cards they got dealt and let the results fall where they were. But I remember thinking a lot of times that I wasn't good enough. I wasn't my brother. I wasn't this person. I wasn't that person. And I tried so hard to fit into these little molds that I thought I was supposed to be in. It was this great awakening when someone finally said that I trusted, a mentor, said, you know what, Neil, go be your own person. Take your own color your own page, and not worry about it. And be proud of what you've colored. And I'm like, yeah, I need somebody to validate it. And he goes, why? Why do you need somebody to come along and say, great job, you did it? You don't. Why do you think you need it?
I think because I got so much validation from my parents that if someone doesn't reach that level, I'm such an all or nothing personality. I'm like, oh, they hate me. They think I'm garbage. So if it's not like a roaring standing ovation, well, I bombed, And I'm talking extremes. Obviously, I do a lot of self-talk, a lot of reframing thoughts. So those are kind of some of my more exaggerated thoughts. And that's an important thing too, is to learn how to reframe your thoughts, because thoughts are just that. We can bookmark them and put them away and focus on something else if we don't like that particular thought, or we can reframe the thought. If I'm like, I'm not good enough for this, I shouldn't even try, I can reframe that as, well, if everyone thought that, then no one would try. So you should try, because you won't know unless you try. That was kind of a weak example. Hopefully you get the point.
This is from eatingrecoverycenter.com, by the way. I found this fascinating. Maybe you will as well. They say 9% of the U.S. population, so that's about 28.8 million Americans, will have an eating disorder in their lifetime. 9% of people. Crazy.
Yeah.
Here's another one. 10,200 deaths each year are direct results of eating disorders. So that's about one death every 52 minutes. Somebody dies of an eating disorder.
Yeah. It is the number one leading cause of death for mental health disorders. The number one.
So why aren't you one of these statistics?
I'm going to shout out my parents again. They really saw me in bad distress and threw me kicking and screaming into an inpatient center. For someone you know is struggling, I highly recommend the Meadows in Wickenburg, Arizona. I had gone to other inpatients before, and some of them only made me worse. That place saved my life. One of the things, I was talking about reframing thoughts. I learned cognitive behavioral therapy there. Really kind of, I have such a logical brain as well. I like puzzles. So logic appeals to my brain. And I feel like CBT has a lot of logical principles that really made me go, what I'm doing is insane. I was in treatment for 65 days, no phone access, no email, just being away from the world and really digging deep, getting on a program. And once I was out of the chaos, you realize how chaotic it is, and you do everything in your power not to go back there. Any of us could go back there at any minute. This disease is so unforgiving. And I've suffered with addictions. We didn't really get into it as much, but I have suffered with addictions to certain drugs and alcohol. And those, you just put them out of your life and they're out of it forever. And that's really hard in and of itself. I don't want to discredit that at all. When it comes to an eating disorder, you can't not eat. So you're still faced with your demon every single day of your life. You need it to survive. So it's probably one of the easiest addictions to slip back into. I haven't been perfect in my 6 years. There will be like a week where I'm really struggling or something like that. And that's why it's just important to keep being aware, keep being insightful, keep talking to people. Like I said, I feel like keeping things a secret probably could have cost me my life.
What keeps you from not going back?
Seeing what the other side looks like. I don't think I believed that there was... I would say seeing what the other side looks like and seeing like, oh, wow, things are better in this respect. Things are better in this respect. And then finding a purpose. I think that having a purpose is what everyone needs, because if you don't have a reason to wake up in the morning or something to look forward to, well, then really, what is the point of it all? I know people who are very depressed, and I think it's because they don't have a purpose or a thing that they're really passionate about in life. So finding my purpose was really important, because when you feel like, oh my God, I'm doing what I'm meant to do, it's so powerful, and I wouldn't risk it for anything.
What's the hardest part about going out to eat or maybe having a meal nowadays?
Mirrors and pictures. You could be enjoying a meal and like think that everything's good, and then you like glance over and you see, I'm saying you, but this is me. I could glance over and I see that like the stomach looks a little bloated or something. It's like, oh, gross. A friend sent me a video the other day from our dance class, and I looked at my stomach and I was like, ew, gross. Again, for me, it's reframing the thoughts, and that thought is like still there. I don't love it. I'm so thankful for my body because it could have shut down in so many ways. If the worst that it is like a little bit of cellulite on my stomach, I'd rather be known for all the internal goodness I have than the external goodness anyway. As I get older, that fades more and more every day. So I'd rather rely on everything else that makes me wonderful.
If you could maybe get in front of some high school girls that are in the sports, that are in this high school, they have a giant eagle in the middle of their floor because they're the Eagles, get you in this gymnasium, we get you a microphone, and you get to talk specifically to high school girls. So freshman girls all the way to senior girls. So what are we talking, like 13 to potentially 18 there? Big range. What would you say to those girls?
God, they're so judgy. That'd be so hard. But
they'd probably be judging you too. So just be aware.
I know. Oh my God. Okay.
I feel judged. I feel judged every time I go there.
Every Gen Z thing that I own. Gosh. I mean, I really would want to stress to them kind of what I was saying just a minute ago. Like, I wish that they would understand that like beauty does fade. And it's actually going to hit you a lot harder if that's the only thing that you've relied on like throughout your life. It's going to hit you a lot harder when you do start to age because it's coming for you eventually. Do things that are more internal based. Discover like what makes you on the inside and like base your personality, base your life around that. Don't base it around how you look. Don't be a Kardashian.
And mic drop. Why would you end with that? I know you're trying to be funny, and I get it.
I know. No, but I think I'm sorry, but I think that those women really caused an epidemic in this world of fillers and surgery. It's like so many, especially I see these young girls and they're all filled up. And they look so much older than they are, and they're doing it because, and it's not that just the Kardashians, but they're definitely the easiest target for this. It's just so sad because we don't appreciate like our real beauty anymore. And it's like, are you going to start getting injections on your neck when this starts getting wrinkled? Like, how much are you going to spend every year to look like you're 20 when you're 70? Like, we have to at some point be like, this is madness. Why do we care so much about looking young or looking beautiful?
I think because on some level, there's that little girl inside of all of us. Well, maybe not in me, but in you, the little boy in me, the little girl in you that wants someone to notice, that wants someone to see them, that wants someone to hear them, that wants somebody to love them. My wife and I are high school sweethearts, so we have a lot of cringe-worthy moments, I've been told by my 17-year-old. She even said to my wife recently, yeah, Dad was kind of cute in high school. I could see what you saw. I could see what you saw, Mom. But now, what's going on? I'm like, wow, I'm right here. But so many times, I think, again, and this is where I get maybe a little on my soapbox, is I think so many times in high school, especially for high school kids, they think high school's it. That's all. They don't realize there's something beyond these 4 years. And that's the thing I've been telling my daughter from like inception is there is more to life than these 4 years. There's more to life. And unfortunately, it's very sad. They lost a student this year to suicide, classmate of my daughter's. And I wish I could have been in that little guy's life. I say little guy because everybody, I feel old, get off my lawn kind of thing, you know. At 45, I feel old, okay? I'm just saying, I'm almost at 50. Just round it up. The thing for me is I wish I could have had a voice in that kid's life. And I'm sure he had multiple people. I'm not the magical voice to make people stay on the right path, or I'm not Tony Robbins, okay? I wonder is if a little girl right now maybe has that little voice in their ear saying, you're not good enough. You're not pretty enough. What would you tell her?
I'd say to prove that voice wrong. Who's that voice? Where's that voice come from? Who's this voice telling you this? How do you know that they're right? Why don't you try proving them wrong?
I love that. Well, Jill, how can folks get connected with you? Is there a social media of choice that you love to hang out on the most? How can folks get in touch
we
with
were
you?
kind of heavy today, but if you want to see my comedic side, I am at Comedy Jill on Instagram, or find me on LinkedIn if you want to hear me talk a little bit more about copywriting and how improv can help your business. I'm Jill Pavlov over there.
You have a great last name.
Yes. Well, it's very funny how my life has brought me to talking about, we didn't talk about copywriting, but I do give a lot of presentations on copywriting and I talk about the psychology behind it. So having the last name Pavlov definitely helps sell that just a little bit harder. The dogs that salivated at the bell.
The dogs.
That was my bell, by the way.
That was your bell. Yeah, she was doing a bell motion. You guys couldn't see that, but there was a
you
bell
were wondering
motion.
why I was randomly going like this.
I was wondering, yeah. All right. Well, Jill, we do this thing at the end of our show. It's called Heal Hustle. It's a fun game we play, so don't worry. I didn't prep you ahead of time, but 6 questions try to answer in 60 seconds or less. So we're going to play that right now. Here we go.
Let's go.
It's now that time in the show to play the fastest growing game in the podcast world. We call it Heal Hustle. Today, our guest will try to answer all 6 of these questions in 60 seconds or less to win an Amazon gift card. Amazon not responsible for this commercial spot, nor did they pay to let us use their name. Audience, feel free to play at home. Are you ready? Let's put 60 seconds on that clock. Ready, set, hustle!
The game begins in 3, 2, 1.
All right, Jill, here we go. One person you would trade places with for a week.
Ooh, let's say Ariana Grande.
Of course. Guilty pleasure in life.
Reality television.
Of course, also. I had a feeling. Best compliment you've ever received.
Someone once told me that I looked like a young Goldie Hawn. That was back when I was blonde, but ooh, did that hit my heart good.
Worst piece of advice ever.
Just to hustle so hard that you have no time for anything else. That it's all work, and no play.
It's terrible advice. What's something you wish you were better at?
I wish that I could play a musical instrument.
Which one?
I mean, I would just love to play the piano.
Out of time. It's all right.
Yeah, and shame on me because I'm a comedian. I should know how quickly 60 seconds
It's
go.
fast. It's fast. Our last question is this. What never fails to make you laugh? That should be easy for you.
The Office.
Right?
Yeah.
Still one of my favorite
Every
shows.
time.
Every time.
Can't help it.
All right. Well, Jill, thank you. Truly, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all that you gave, all that you shared. You're fantastic. I love your energy. I love your laughter, even through the pain. I love that you could be serious and bring some laughter. It seemed very similar to me. So thanks for that.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike. That is it. That is all. That is, in fact, our show today. What'd you think? I don't know about anybody else. That stat, that 9%, that was mind-boggling. So this is an odd question perhaps to ask. Are you part of that 9%? Is that you? Are you in those shoes? Have you been yourself maybe thinking about, like, I need to get out of this. I don't want to be in these shoes anymore. They're hideous. They're ugly. I feel hideous. I feel ugly. The thought of looking into a mirror is awful. I don't like it. I don't like what I see. I don't like the man or woman in the mirror. So what will you do with that today? Will you continue to be the 9%, or will you find a way, maybe through Jill's encouragement and energy, to say, no, tomorrow is a brand new day. Tomorrow is. You can get up, you can make your bed, and you can say, you know what? The 2 best words in the English language, next time, I'm going to do it better. I'm going to be better. Let me know if you can do that. I'd be curious. OPSpodcast.com is a great place to let me know. You can let us know also on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and X. And don't forget this before we go. Remember, it's the most important thing of all, and that's this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned till next week, because guess what? We're going to walk in other people's shoes.